Dr. Stephen Crocker, board chair of Icann from 2011 to 2017. Steve, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Let's get right to it. Icann's relationship with the U.S. government is very long, very complex. What would you deem as its most problematic points in its history?
Problematic points, yes, indeed. Different people have different perspectives. I'll tell you mine. We operated until last fall under an IANA contract. Now there were actually two.
Fall of 2016.
2016, yes, thank you. And as we know, there were really two parallel relationships. There was the IANA contract, and then there was another relationship which was first started as a memorandum of understanding and then transformed into a joint project agreement and then transformed yet again into affirmation of commitments. And now the affirmation of commitments have been swallowed up into our new bylaws. That sequence was aimed at general properties of Icann, of accountability and general oversight. I found the IANA contract, however, which was a more cut and dried, ordinary contract of, we are hiring Icann to do the following things, and here's the list, and you execute that, and we evaluate you, and if we don't like what you're doing, we'll tell you about it, and if we really don't like what you're doing, we may move it, and so forth. I found all that to be much more problematic, and for reasons different from what most other people found. The IANA contract served as an irritant to on the international stage because it made very clear that the U.S. controlled the IANA function, and that was somewhere between uncomfortable and threatening to, depending upon which countries we're talking about. I had the privilege of seeing all of it from the inside and seeing how it all operated, and I found it uncomfortable for sort of lesser or more subtle reasons, in that there were aspects where we couldn't be forthright about some of the details. We couldn't publish all our procedures. We couldn't be forthcoming about how long it took various things to happen and so forth. And those are very, very small points which you can work with, and as we did over time, but it's corrosive. It unbalances the relationship, and it put us, Icann, in a very awkward position of not being able to be as forthright and as transparent as we would like to have been, as we should have been.
So for an organization that utters the words accountability and transparency every third sentence, it seems like it would be incredibly problematic.
It was, for exactly that reason. It was incredibly problematic. And so just to emphasize it, it was philosophically, as you're suggesting, it was completely contrary. And so, there's sort of deep irony that we had to operate under that despite what we were saying. And then even if that had not been as big an issue, just any organization that's operating like that, it's very imbalanced. People who are in the position of providing that service and interacting with the government find themselves having two masters. They have the internal management structure, and then they have the external government oversight. And sometimes those are at odds with each other.
Why was that in the contract? Why were these non-disclosure factors built into the contract?
I don't know. I had, in my earlier life, when I worked at DARPA, been in the same position of overseeing contracts, and we took a completely opposite position. Only if there was a very specific reason having to do with classified information, basically, would we put controls on our contractors. Mainly, we wanted them to be as open and as forthcoming as possible. We put very few restrictions on. So I don't want to speak for them. I can only speak for what I saw as the results, the effects, and that I found inappropriate and hobbling in a way. And I am just absolutely delighted that we have gotten past that point. An interesting question is whether there will be some different set of things that get in the way, but hopefully not.
When I interviewed your good friend Vince Cerf,
Yep.
and asked him to characterize the U.S. government relationship with Icann, he said not very supportive and problematic. Is that an overstatement?
It's not an overstatement, and I know